Welcome to Unorganized Thought, the podcast where we will talk about a bunch of stuff and we will try to stay on topic and keep it as coherent as possible.
Unlikely.
Yeah, unlikely.
Very unlikely.
We're the Akhtar brothers. I'm Aidan Akhtar.
And I'm Kieran.
I'm Liam Akhtar. I'm clearly related to these two.
Yeah.
It's quite obvious.
But yeah, today we're talking about Dr. Sleep. We went and saw Dr. Sleep. But before we kind of hop into that, just to kind of get some conversation going, just thought I'd kind of report on, whatever's been going on. We, in the last few days, we got Disney Plus.
Tight.
Yeah, and so far we didn't do too much exploring, but we watched the first episode of The Mandalorian, and that was pretty good. That was pretty top, I think. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I really liked it. It really had kind of the feel of Star Wars that has...
Original trilogy vibes.
Yeah, if I do kind of say so myself, has been lacking for the past couple movies. And so that was really good. We also watched some new extras that were released to go along with Avengers Endgame. Just kind of some alternate scenes, and there was one that I really, really liked that, spoiler alert for Endgame, is an alternate version of how things go down on Vormir, and an alternate version of how essentially Black Widow ends up dying. And I've always thought that in that movie, I've never really liked kind of how that ended up going, and so I really enjoyed kind of this alternate version.
What didn't you like about it?
Well, just that it kind of always felt like it was a trick. In Infinity War, when Thanos was on Vormir, it was a certain type of music, a certain pacing, and when Gamora fell, she landed in a certain position, and then in Endgame, they replicated essentially the scene, kind of beat for beat, same music, and I always just I never really took it to heart. It seemed like it was kind of a trick, essentially. I thought there's going to be some sort of a catch to this whole Soul Stone deal, and then, I don't know.
I don't know. I always had my feelings about it. I always thought it was fine. I thought it was interesting to see the contrast between the two, but
I think that's more what they were going for.
Yeah, I think so too. But I do think that the deleted scene was an interesting take, and I do think that I have theories about the reasons why they switched it, but that will probably be for an Endgame podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, I just
want to do that.
Yeah. Since Disney Plus came out, I thought
that's fair.
I'd mention it. Yeah. But anyways,
we saw Dr. Sleep a couple days ago, and we considered doing the podcast immediately after and just seeing how that goes. But we kind of decided on giving a couple days to marinate because, as it's been seen time and time again, especially in movies over the last couple of years, that people's opinions of them can change drastically after a couple days of seeing the movie.
Yeah.
But this one, I think, is one where it hasn't changed for me so much, where I felt a certain way about it when we saw it, and I feel pretty much the same now.
So what, like thumb up, thumb down?
I would definitely give it a thumb up. Besides, there's a scene. Do you want to do kind of a non-spoiler review?
So
for a minute?
Maybe we'll just each kind of go around with our non-spoiler.
So what we'll do is we'll kind of we'll try and rate it without giving away too much of the plot, and then we'll go into details and spoilers. So I don't know. For me, I think I would definitely give it big thumbs up. I thought it was great, and I think that if you're an average movie watcher and you're just looking for a movie to go to see on the weekend with your family or your friends, this is probably not it.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a sequel to The Shining that very much captures and does justice to the movie, I think this is
Yeah.
it's top
Yeah,
notch.
especially for people who love the movie.
Yeah.
I know that there's a bit of controversy between books and the movie, especially with The Shining, because Stephen King notoriously hated that movie. And so, but this was very much, as far as the movie goes, it was The Shining in spirit, kind of in every way. Like, whether it was, just evoking the same feelings, or, recreating the
Certain
pacing and the
aspects,
scenes. It was very much...
And even certain vibes with the music.
Yeah.
Because that was always something big that I always felt in The Shining, was the music. And more than most movies played a very big role. Like, the music was a character in itself.
Mhm.
And I definitely think they kind of brought that back for this one.
For sure.
The thing I keep coming back to, like, kind of on that point, is like the drive up to the hotel.
Yeah.
It was like beat for beat.
Yeah.
With The Shining, as soon as it started and like the music came in and hit the first bass note, I was like, oh yeah, this is identical.
Yeah.
This is perfect. Yeah, they did a good job with that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and so I think that we'll probably now go into kind of some references either to The Shining or to other Stephen King things, and then maybe sort of some theories that we have, which is kind of like probably going to be the bulk of this
and anything
podcast. And anything else you want to
about,
add? But
any book things or additions?
If you haven't seen it yet, just pause the podcast now, go buy your tickets, and then continue it later, because it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, we won't do it justice by explaining it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you haven't seen The Shining, watch that too.
Yeah, exactly. Watch The Shining.
Watch The Shining first.
Which I don't know why, like, can't imagine. Well, I guess a lot of people haven't seen it,
It's
but
gotta be, yes.
I'm sure there are people who haven't seen it, but anybody who's interested in this franchise,
and if you didn't know, Dr. Sleep is indeed a sequel to The Shining. I think a lot of people didn't really get that.
I guess, it's that's an interesting thing.
It wasn't really advertised.
Yeah, it
exactly.
Like, other than I think it was
posters.
Yeah, I think in the second trailer you see Red Drum.
Yeah,
and
I don't know if
then
they
it's
so
like,
much.
oh,
even in
wow.
the first trailer, you're right. I don't really think, maybe other than saying the name Danny Torrance.
Yeah.
Which, even if you're not very familiar with
big
the
on it.
series, that probably means nothing to you. And so that's something I noticed, is that they didn't push it as this is a sequel to The Shining.
And I thought that was kind of interesting.
I do think that's interesting.
This one, and I don't know for sure, but it seemed to me to kind of fly under the radar. I didn't see a whole lot of advertisement for it, and like, we went what was essentially opening weekend, I think, and we could easily get seats. Like, it filled the theater, but like, it wasn't a big rush or anything, Yeah. And for a sequel to The Shining, you might think that would happen.
Is another thing, because
which is weird.
I don't know this for
advertise
sure, but
it
I'm
that way.
pretty sure. Like, don't quote me on this, but if I remember correctly, The Shining was one of those movies that at the time wasn't necessarily very well regarded, and like, when it came out, it wasn't as much of a hit, and it's one of those ones that over time people really came to love it, like a classic.
More of a cult classic, a blockbuster.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, like, and obviously over the years, it's gained a reputation that, like, it's The Shining.
Yeah.
But like, and so it's kind of a weird back and forth to not advertise it, but then again, it's really interesting, because how many movies nowadays do you see not advertised as, oh, Batman 2, or like, this is the sequel to the Avengers, because you can tell because Captain America's in it,
Yeah.
So like, it's interesting. All new new actors, new completely different people. So it's interesting.
And one more thing I'll say before we move into spoilers is that something we heard in interviews before we went and saw the film was that something the director tried to set out to do is to try and please both book fans and movie fans. And so, that being said, this is very much a continuation of The Shining, the movie.
Yes.
It continues in the canon of the movie universe.
I think.
But then, that being said, also tries to maybe sort of correct
Yeah,
some
I
of the
think
things,
that's what it is
some of
that
the changes
he
that
tried
happened
to
in The
maybe-
Shining.
He tried to please
Yeah.
the book readers.
Yeah. And I don't know how
Then
well
Kubrick,
that went.
who is very much like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Stephen King, you don't like it? Screw you, man. This
Yeah.
is my movie. I'm Kubrick, and I will do whatever I want.
I don't think it was so much I don't care as he was making less of a movie adaptation of a novel and
Yeah, he just
more of a
made it his
spin-off
own.
idea,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's like The Shining, but in an alternate universe.
Yeah.
Where the hotel doesn't blow up at the end.
Yeah.
Right, where they just get out and run away,
Mhm.
and where the hedge doesn't come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there you go. And so, yeah, we're like, generally, if I was to give a generalization, we're much closer to movie fans, other than Liam, who's read The Shining,
and some
and at least some of Doctor Sleep.
Years ago, though.
Yeah.
I need to read them. I need
Yeah.
to read them again.
Some
Yeah.
of Doctor Sleep,
And
or
so
all of it,
exactly,
we don't know.
yeah, and
It's about that much.
yeah, and
So some
that's
of it.
and so exactly, we're very much book fans. Or
Oh, no.
sorry, exactly the opposite of that.
Yes.
We're very much
We haven't read the
movie
books.
fans. We haven't read the books at all, and we
But-
really liked it. So I'm curious to know
So see, yeah, that's
what
something
the other
else.
side of it is.
I'm very curious to see how book fans and Stephen King himself react to this
I
movie.
mean, I don't want to linger on that point too long, but I mean, like, as a guy that like I read the book. What was it? I was like 15 when I read the book, and I didn't actually see the movie till 3 years later.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't really understand the whole war, but the whole
Yeah.
whole kerfuffle. Sure, yeah, good word. Between it, right? Because like, I mean, it was such a great movie.
Mhm.
Just as a movie,
Yeah,
it was so well
exactly.
done that I mean,
Yeah.
sure, it doesn't follow blow by blow
Yeah,
the
and-
novel, but I mean, it's Stanley
Yeah.
freaking Kubrick, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's
And that's actually
gonna
an
do his own
interesting
thing.
thing that I not probably for this not probably for this podcast, but to explore somewhere is that movie adaptations to books, usually when they don't follow the book as closely, they end up being worse. And so for him to go off but make it a good movie, I think makes the interesting contrast, you know?
Yeah.
Like where you
It
take a
is-
book
it is-
like The
it
Maze
is-
Runner and you go far off, and then as you make that series of movies, it gets very, very bad. Sorry, people who like those movie series, you're wrong. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a lot of times
is
when people
weird.
adapt books and they
When they
stray
go off
away,
script,
it tends to be
starts
bad. And so when he makes his goal was to make a good movie and follow the book second. I think it creates an interesting dynamic.
and it also opened up the universe to take a different take on Dr. Sleep. Too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
which I think worked out pretty well for them. And
Absolutely.
a bit going off of Aidan, we do want to get into
Yeah,
talking
don't
about
linger
it.
here for too
But
long.
we haven't like you said, we haven't read the books, but we're fans of the movies. But we are also I think all three of us are quite big fans of Stephen King as a whole, and like the universe and style he likes to take. And so just kind of adding that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we can probably dive deeper into the thing. So, last warning, if you haven't seen it for whatever reason and you're watching this is probably the time to kind of hit the brakes, because we will most likely say some things that you don't want to know about it before seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go see it, but
Yeah.
come back after.
Come
Yes,
back after.
But go see it.
Yeah. So I think that now a good thing to do would be kind of do a deeper analysis into references kind of to The Shining, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah.
I have a few things that I kind of wanted to just more specific.
Just to touch on.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of like references that
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to touch on. Obviously, there was returning characters from The Shining. Something that we talked about was, I think it was a smart move to just recast
Yes,
and
the
then
actors.
not try and do any sort of CGI
Recreation of young Jack Nicholson.
Exactly. And so, like, we get a new young actor for young Danny Torrance, his mom,
And
Jack.
It
And
looked really close.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's
All
a
of them.
point that I had, is that I
They
at
killed
first
that.
I didn't know how I felt about it, but as I it sat with me, I came to really appreciate it, and the more I thought about it, the more I was actually like, I liked it a lot, and I thought it was very interesting, the actors they got to play everyone. especially because of how distinct and almost, and at this point iconic, the original actors are. Like Jack Nicholson, and I'm sorry that I can't remember the woman's name who played the mom, but they're very distinct looking people, you know? Yeah. And so to find actors that can not only look like them but embody the same.
Yeah. The one I was really impressed with was Dick Halloran.
Did you look up?
Yeah.
It was a different guy.
It was a different guy.
I thought so.
But I was shocked to see that because he looked so much like him. I don't know if they did some makeup on him. Well, because I looked up the guy on IMDb and he looks like him, but he doesn't look as much like him as he did in the movie. And like the way he talked and everything, it was like very, very accurate. And so I think that it's sometimes a lot smarter just to recast and sort of give that suspension of disbelief to the audience, because that way, you know, it's not going to be potentially some uncanny valley CGI monster that you've created. You know, it's always just going to be, oh, that's a different character. They look enough similar. They look similar enough, but also, you know, they're not uncanny valley too close. Yeah. You know, like, I think it's a smart move to just recast.
Yeah. I think so too.
Definitely. But anyways, they had a little bit of flashback. Like the opening shot was Danny on his big wheeler going through, which is like an iconic shot. And so, you know, that was a real good way to set the tone, to have the beginning be
one of the most famous
shots.
Of all time.
Exactly.
Basically The Shining.
Yeah.
What else do I have here? There was lots of shots that you noticed were like, that's meant to mirror this exact shot from The Shining. I think maybe the first time I noticed it was when Dan was in the office with that doctor guy, and just kind of the way they shot it, I immediately went, this is like when Jack was interviewing for the job.
That.
Yeah.
You're right, though.
And I think it was also, and it was absolutely deliberate. Like, I'm not, like, there's no doubt
and he just so happened to have also been offered the job.
Yeah, and I think it was partially the color palette, and I haven't looked up to compare. And but I think it was
like a kind of a rim at the top.
The way they
room
had it was the way they had the art on the walls. I remember they had paintings or pictures in The Shining, but in Dr. Sleep they had the wall color was a very strange color, and I think the reason for that was because to match or mirror or just be very close to in The Shining.
Yeah. And also, like you mentioned, when they're making the drive up to the hotel, like showing him on the road, and then especially when he went to gas up the car, I think that was like an exact one when Dick was
it was a combination of when they first go up at the beginning of the movie with the whole family, and then when Dick is going up to save them. I think it was kind of an amalgamation.
Like that may have been the same gas station. Like,
it'd be really
I
cool
didn't double check, but maybe it was meant to be. Because it that immediately is what came to mind when they stopped and were gassing up the car.
Well, that's interesting though, because I mean, that was kind of a thing that I've been thinking about, that like I didn't notice that with like those scenes. Well, I mean the drive with the mountain and the gas station to something, and then Maze too.
Yeah, the Maze
to a big extent, but like it kind of felt like the movie was about running away from and like hiding from your past, rather than like actually looking at it and getting over it and getting past it.
Yeah.
Right, and that was kind of like, I guess this is getting ahead of myself, but that was kind of like the resolution of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Is that Danny like actually
confront,
not just faced it, used it, right?
Physically
used
confronted
it
and fought it.
Yeah, confronted and fought it, and used it to kill, and used it to kill the present problem, right?
Which I feel like could be the maximum way to overcome something.
That was awesome.
Yeah. And so like I'll just kind of use that to kind of, like you say, is that's kind of a main theme in the show, is that like, and they kind of use Dan's substance abuse to kind of also embody that, and just that theme of kind of
past demons.
Yeah, past demons, dealing with your past, how you deal with your past in a healthier way, and how you can then, like, how your trauma in your past doesn't necessarily, define your future. You don't have to, he didn't have to be a horrible, axe-wielding, like, psychopath, even though they exactly showed us, this is where Jack was not strong enough to, like, overcome the demons, and Dan was. He was able to use the love in his heart to beat back the spirits of the hotel.
That was something,
and it's that big juxtaposition.
Is a theme, another theme is not only the past demons and problems, but a big one was Danny not being his father.
Yeah.
And the first time we kind of see that is when he's dealing with his alcoholism, and he's going to the meetings and doing that, and that was kind of the first time we see him overcome and kind of realize that I don't have to be like him, and I can find my own path. And the way he kind of used it in the movie was he almost did it for him, because his dad couldn't do it. And then we do see that throughout the movie is Dan trying to be better than him, and not, as you said, not being corrupted by the same things that he was.
Yeah, exactly. And this is perfect. We've come full circle back on track to references, because another exact example of that is when he goes and sits down at the bar, just like his dad did, and the bartender is whoever the past caretaker was at the time. For Jack, it was Delbert Grady or whoever the caretaker was, and now that Jack has been the caretaker, when Dan gets there, it's now his own father. And that was another really strong way of, like,
showing his
overcoming this idea that he has to become what his father is. And like when Jack sits down at that scene, he just immediately takes the whiskey that is being offered to him, despite being a recovering alcoholic. And Dan, he just, like, he fights with it and eventually just pushes it away. And that was one thing that kind of right after that scene, I was thinking ahead as I was watching, and I was like, I bet they're going to do a take on what happened to Jack with Danny, and have that kind of have him chasing Abra. I foresaw that coming.
But even though you see it coming,
it's still
like powerful.
Yeah, it doesn't prepare you.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
But anyways, I kind of was foreseeing that, and I thought, after every instance of Danny, like, rejecting the alcohol, rejecting these, like, unhealthy coping mechanisms, I thought there's one thing that would ruin this movie, is if Dan was corrupted by the spirits and was just completely gave into it and became just, like, suffered the same fate as his father. And I thought that's the one thing that could ruin this film, is if they just go completely left turn from everything that they were setting up. And, like, that just shows how weird my mind is when I'm watching a movie, that I consider, and maybe it's because I've been so wrong.
You were afraid.
I was afraid that this movie would all of a sudden flip on its head and betray me. But, I was very glad to see that they handled it so well.
I mean, like, we keep talking about, like, how, like, Danny was doing such a good job of supplanting his father. You gotta remember, like, for, like, 30 years since the Overlook, he wasn't. Right?
That's true.
Like, the spirits followed him, and he boxed them up, and he drank to like, calm down the shine and close off the shine, so he just put himself away from it, box himself away from it, right? Like, I think that's really the important difference. Is
Well, and that's a perfect example. Kind of what you were saying, one of the themes is running away from your problems. You can't really hit it on the head of the nail much more than literally boxing up
Yeah.
your demons.
Yeah.
Just
and
pushing
hiding
them down
just
in
repressing
boxes.
all of
Yeah.
your evil.
Yeah.
Fucking bathtub lady, just here.
Yeah.
You're in a box now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just gonna put that in the vault.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Never gonna think about that again.
Yeah.
And if I do,
Exactly.
I'll just drink. Yeah.
Just like one of the scenes in this movie.
Yeah. And so there you go. It's a really good character journey because he came from such a dark place
Yeah.
and eventually
Yeah,
like
that's what
overcame
really
it
makes
and
the movie powerful.
yeah, and was able to do what his father couldn't.
Mhm.
But anyways, just to kind of go over these real quick before we move on, a few other things. The general cinematography,
Yeah.
kind of the weird fades were very much
Mm.
The Shining, and just cinematography in general, the very, very excellent cinematography.
Yeah,
very,
the
because
visuals were
that's
just
something that kind of
spectacular, I
that
thought.
sometimes lacks from modern cinema is really using the camera, in
Sure,
really
yeah.
creative ways.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to see.
Yeah,
And like,
that-
not to say that like movies without that are bad or anything, but
No.
it's refreshing to kind of see that every now and again.
Yeah.
To
Well, and-
use it in such an interesting
and
way.
that's something is that I was thinking about the whole time is that I love the visuals and just the way they use them. But when I thought about it is that of course this movie had amazing visuals because it's a sequel to The Shining.
Yeah.
Like if it didn't, it would be
It would have fallen flat.
Exactly. Like that is one of
It
the
had a lot
biggest
to live up to.
things is like The Shining when people think about it. Just the way that visuals work, and you
Yeah.
talked about this a bit, just the way that they mess with your mind in camera shots.
Oh yeah.
And just like the camera in The Shining was like its own character. Like it just the way it was controlled. And
Mhm.
if they hadn't done that in this movie, you're right, I think it wouldn't have done as
Yeah.
well. And it wouldn't have gotten the feeling so much. And I just wanted to bring up the one point with the visuals that I really liked. And when I was thinking about it, it seems almost to me that I think this could be potentially a controversial one. But to me, I really loved the weird flying segment where she was
Yeah.
just kind of there
Yeah.
and just flying over. And to me, I really loved the way it looked, and because it was weird and it was unsettling, and I felt like that was exactly what it wanted
Yeah.
to invoke. And I do think that there are some people who will see that and just
And
be
be
like,
like,
ugh,
"That
I
was
don't
the
like
dumbest
that,"
thing I've ever
and they
seen.
might not
That's
like the
boring.
way it vibes and the way it looks. But to me, that just I really
Yeah.
love that scene. And then when she comes in through the houses and you can see how fast she's going,
Yeah.
but then the camera was locked on her, and
Mhm.
so no matter what orientation the world was,
She
compared
was
to her,
always upright.
she was always
Yeah,
upright in the
that was
camera,
really
and I
cool.
thought that was spectacular.
Something that I said to you right after the movie was that there's this weird space between really creepy and really goofy that makes for like really, really scary.
Yes.
And this was kind of
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
where she's just standing
And I
there
do think
in
that-
space looking at the earth, and it
Yeah.
looked really weird.
Yeah.
But it was like you say, it just creates this super
It's
off-putting
that
shot.
unsettling, yeah.
Well, like it's also because like by that point you've kind of gotten a feel for that character,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Like that character is this vicious, inhuman, just devil, demonic creature,
Mhm.
right? That is basically just like everyone's nightmares all wrapped up into one thing.
Yeah.
Like murders and feeds on the souls of children and all this stuff, right? It's like every horrifying fairy tale all gommed up into one, and they put a hat on her.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then now she's watching the entire world
Exactly.
just standing
Exactly.
there effortlessly.
you know what? Sure, it's goofy, but you know what she's going to do.
Yeah.
And like you know her well enough at that point that it's like, okay.
It doesn't really matter that she's floating there weirdly because I know that she's
Yeah,
terrifying.
exactly. Even if it looks
Yeah.
goofy, it's just like maybe even because it looks goofy rather than in spite of it, it's just that much more sinister,
Mhm. Exactly.
Right. which is interesting.
Yeah. Another shot that was kind of taken right from The Shining was when Rose the Hat, when they're in the overlook, when Danny's backing up the stairs
Yes.
and she's walking
It was a
towards
flip, basically.
him all
Yeah.
calmly, just like Jack had done to his wife.
Except now
Yeah.
he had the axe.
Except,
Exactly.
Well,
Still scary.
yeah, yeah.
And then one more thing that I have basically for the visuals and kind of effects almost is that for the most part, I thought it looked very, very good, and it was pretty seamless, and I didn't notice anything. There was a couple times when, to me, the glowing eye effect didn't necessarily land as maybe well as it should have, but it was a small thing that I'm just nitpicking. And then, but yeah, that's about it. Like, when they had the gunfight and they fought them, and then they're disappearing so fast. Like, if you look into that a bit more, I feel like they may not look superb, but then again, maybe they don't have to, you know, like, to get the effect that they're dusting,
but like,
you know?
The thing with that scene that really freaked me out, like, because we'd seen, what was his name, Grandpa Fleck or whatever?
Yeah.
We'd already seen him cycle out.
That was intense.
Right? And that was just this crazy intense scene, like, okay, so these things die horribly,
Yeah.
first of all. And you know what?
Which
like,
they deserve.
they deserve, but at the same
still,
time,
it's like,
just,
oh my god.
it's just terrible to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the weird thing about that gunfight was I noticed that every time one of them got hit by a bullet, it wasn't just hit and, like, slowly
And
fall
down,
down.
yes.
It was hit, bang,
Well, yeah, but
and you're cycling.
Well, it was that too,
Ah.
but the other thing was there was not really any instant kills. Like, that was something to
yeah.
drive that home too, is they did get hit and went down, but they weren't dead. They sat there and went, ah!
Yeah.
Like, and that just added to the
Yeah.
gruesomeness of it. And I don't know if we want to move in. We're talking about the gunfight.
Well, yeah,
now, so we might
here.
as
So
well-
let's just,
Do you wanna
I'll
move into
quickly hit off these last
Yeah,
few,
let's
and
move
then,
on.
yeah,
Let's go
before
get
we get too
distracted.
far away from the gunfight, because, like, yeah, I have a little bit to say about that. One more that was really cool was Danny walks up and puts his face in the so-called "Here's Johnny" hole, and like, they recreate that shot. He just pokes his face through, and I thought, you guys, you filmmakers, you know, like, they know everything that they need to kind of do to get the audience to go, oh, there's that thing.
It also, a lot of that was just like walking the path through the hotel that his father had walked on the way to kill his wife and son was just like foreshadowing in the worst way.
Yeah.
It's like they're telling you, you don't want this to happen, but it's gonna fucking happen anyway.
It's happening whether
Sorry,
you want it or
kids.
not.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
we're gonna walk through the steps, and then we're gonna really walk through the steps.
Yeah,
with you.
exactly.
Yeah. And then the last two are just that when they were in the hotel, there was, of course, the blood elevator.
Yeah, that just didn't phase Rose.
Yeah, Rose was just like, she seemed
She's probably into it.
by it.
She's
Nice. She looked like, She like smiled and then
Yeah.
just kept going. Like,
Weird place.
yeah,
it was
weird
almost
place.
like, that's a cute trick. It kind of reminded me of how,
That's a good point.
you know, like it kind of reminded me of in like Harry Potter when they've got the Grimmauld Place and they've got that Dumbledore that rushes you. It kind of like how Dumbledore or one of the guys in the Order who knew it was there, how they would kind of react, or like how like if someone who knew it was there just kind of go, interesting. You know,
yeah.
like
To
it's
go
just
like,
because she's super
nice
devious
try,
and
'cause-
just evil, and she sees it, it's almost intriguing.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I bet
Where
she,
it's like,
I bet she
Not
also,
bad.
I bet she also assumed that it was Abra
Messing
creating
with
that,
her, yeah.
and
No,
she
that's-
walked in and was like, that's not gonna scare
Actually,
me.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
That is
Because
a good
like
point.
the whole movie was clustered around Rose and Abra playing these magic tricks on each other.
yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
which was another thing that I thought was amazing.
really, really good. And then last one is that we get kind of a return of all the ghosts from The Shining, all returning at
Most
the
of
end.
them.
There,
All
most
of the
them.
prominent
except for
ones.
the creepy,
The weird naked bear
creepy
man.
bear man. Let's just double check, make sure that this is
Oh yeah, I know that
going.
one. This one, mine.
I'd forgotten
Okay,
about the
never
bear
mind.
man.
Thank
dude.
goodness.
Like,
Yeah, that was always so weird to me, and something, this is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but until this movie until I watched this movie, some of the things about The Shining didn't always make sense to me. Like, I didn't put together that all of the kind of, like, and I call them ghosts, obviously they're not, like, strictly speaking ghosts, but, something I didn't notice was that all of the beings there are essentially hotel guests and party guests.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't
And
realize that?
Yeah, I didn't realize
Well,
that
that
until
bad.
this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and like, because I always thought that weird bear man was just this
he
naked
was
bear man was
partying.
just the weirdest thing. I was like, what the hell was that? And now, like, that was kind of like really dumb of me to not realize that.
I'm gonna loan you this, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there was all and again with those that naked shower lady just cropping up every like 5 seconds, you know. And, like
it is scary, and she's a frightening thing to behold, but it always almost makes me go heh, because she's so happy.
She's always just trying to give you a kiss and a butterscotch.
Yeah, it's like what do you really want?
Yeah.
Besides to stick your hands in my face.
Yeah.
That was
man.
rough. That was rough.
But I couldn't help but be like, you know what? I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Not to Danny though.
Not to Danny. Yeah,
that's when I was like,
I
don't care about Rose the Hat. Yeah, stick your hands all in her face skin.
Yeah. But anyways, going back to the gunfight.
Yes.
As kind of a real like
probably
maybe
my
we can
favorite.
Yeah. Maybe we can use this
which
to
is
kind of like build into kind of some of our standout moments.
Yeah.
But that was when I decided that this was a really, really good movie.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden there was just a gunfight in the middle of this horror movie, a very realistic, just kind of fish in a barrel, you know, and it really kind of subverted, and I use that word lightly because it's kind of a cursed word these days, subversion, but it kind of took you for a loop because all of a sudden they're just taking all of them out.
All of a sudden.
They just like all of the knot were just.
It was interesting because as crazy, and it's like, wow, this is the action set piece of Act 2 basically, but at the same time I think it did a very, very good job of being grounded and like in real almost. You know, where like a lot of gunfights nowadays you'll see and it's like John Wick's fighting, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the John Wick movies, but Danny and Billy are up there and they're picking those guys off, and it just did a very good job of like they picked this spot for a reason because those guys are screwed down there and they're picking them off and they can't hit them. It was the perfect spot to be.
Well, that was just it. They got there. The first thing Billy said was good blinds up there.
Yeah, exactly. And like I that part was spectacular.
And that's one thing. As soon as they were driving, as soon as Billy was roped into any of this, I was like, Billy is dead.
And that was the thing.
This perfectly good dude.
Bro, as soon as he opened the door.
And that was the one thing. And,
I need your
and
help.
the gunfight, because I
every
knew
bullet that went off, I was like, is Billy dead?
He's dead. Every time one of the knots shot, I was like, Billy's dead. He's done. He's done. But then he didn't, and then he died in the most spectacular fashion. Like that was crazy.
This is something that I said that Kieran agreed with me on, is even though they killed every single one of them that were there, they killed every single one of the knot that came, Snakebite Andy won that fight.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Even though she died in horrible agony, she won that fight.
Well,
and like,
it was,
how do you like how masterfully to craft a situation like that where they are taken out, like, you know, so obviously, and then yet she wins.
Yeah.
Like,
and
that's,
part of
that's
the thing
crazy
that drove that home was she died laughing.
Yeah.
And it just hurts you.
Yeah.
Where it's like, Danny, shoot her again. Just like, don't let her win, man.
Yeah.
And she won.
Yeah, she won.
Put another one in her head.
And it was just, that was so brutal. Awful because just, what a good man, Billy. He like, and he didn't even need any proof. He just believed Danny. He just believed in him.
Just the best guy.
And he just was such a good guy. That's why I knew he was doomed.
He was too pure.
You know the other thing about Billy? Well, yeah, too pure. Like, the other thing about Billy was that, like, there were, like, 3 or 4 instances throughout the movie where characters are referencing a lot of people shine a little bit and never realize it. It's just this feeling they get in their gut.
Yeah.
And I mean, like Billy shined, clearly, right?
Yeah.
Every time we talked, there's like, I've seen you, like, what was it? I've seen you before, or I've seen that look before.
It just, like, basically
have
on
a
an
feeling about
empathic
you.
level.
Yeah.
He like, and yeah, you're right. I didn't think about it that way, but I definitely think that he probably had some sort of, a little, even if it was a little bit.
Well, yeah, when they were at the meeting or whatever, or maybe it was at Teeny Town or whatever, they had an exchange where they kind of pointed that out or something, where he said sometimes you just get a feeling about some people.
That's exactly.
And Danny said, like, I know that's hard to believe, Billy said or whatever, and so Danny said, easier than you think or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and although you're right. Now that you've said that, I definitely think he had a bit of it in him. But I thought something that I liked about him was that he was a very grounded character in this movie full of people with basically superpowers. He was basically our tether to real people.
Well, it's like that's kind of the cool thing about that gunfight scene too, right? Is that you keep seeing the Nod as like these superhuman creatures that can do whatever they want. You know what? Bullets still fucking kill them, son.
Exactly. Exactly. Because when it comes down to
weakness.
it, they are just people. They are people who shine, but you know, like they're not these immortal beings. Yeah. Like they get boxed in, and like any person in that situation, they're outgunned, and so they died. Yeah. Do you want? Did you have any other kind of specific parts that you wanted to touch on?
Let's see. We talked about that.
Anything come to mind specifically?
I don't think anything for this section. I think I'm pretty good for this section. One
thing that I wanted to touch on, just while we're kind of still in the realm of references.
Yeah, that's the only other thing.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Abra.
This one died on us.
Yeah.
Oh, like that one, it reset and completely, like we missed the first half on that.
Is mine still going?
Yeah.
Okay.
This one's gonna conk out.
Well, in Abra's room, and we saw this in the trailer, she had a Ruby poster. Ruby is an animated series by Rooster Teeth that Kieran and I like, and it was pointed out to us. I think Lindsay Jones posted it on her Instagram, and she's one of the voice actors in Ruby, because it was in the trailer. You can see it behind her when she goes up to the window. And so that was really cool. I was like, wow, Ruby's in this movie. That seems kind of weird and out of place. But then it featured even more than that. When Abra first wakes up, they do like even a close-up on a figurine beside her bed, which is the character Emerald from Ruby. Yeah. And later when you get a better view of her room, she had another poster of just Emerald.
Emerald poster.
Yeah. And so there's another sneaky reference, one more sneaky Ruby reference that is a little bit more obscure.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be the one that most people miss, and it's almost the one that's the most in your face.
Yeah, very unprofessional here for a second.
But
yeah, no worries.
I mean, I was just fixing the cameras. We're all good here.
We'll use that as the thumbnail. Get a little extra clicks.
But yeah, I think this is one that is. This is one that no. It's. I think the way you could put it is the way that it's one that no one missed, but most people won't understand.
Won't be able to explain. Yeah. Kind of this weird moment. So, in that moment, like we talked about, where Rose is floating around, and she eventually finds Abra's bedroom.
And they have
they're in this mind plane sort of mind zone.
I forget whose head they originally say they're in. I think they were. Abra's. I think was it Abra's?
They're in Abra's, but then Abra infiltrates Rose's. But when the form that Abra chooses to take when she sits up and tries to intimidate Rose is Emerald's bob cut.
Yeah, it's blue.
I think it was blue. If it was green, I couldn't really tell because it was dark.
Eyes.
But then no eyes for some reason.
Okay, and I have a theory kind of.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that like I think that's really cool. I wasn't expecting Ruby to play kind of such an and it wasn't a huge role, but it was a lot more than I expected. Yeah. After just seeing a poster in the trailer,
I thought that
all of a sudden Emerald is clearly a hero of hers, and she uses kind of that persona to draw strength when she needs it.
And that's
I thought that was really interesting and kind of weird to see. I tried to do a little bit of background research on why. I think that the actress of Abra is a huge fan of Ruby.
Cool.
But it wasn't really a sponsorship deal between Rooster Teeth or anything. But it was just kind of
just an
interesting choice, and it kind of grounded it for me because it's like this teenage girl.
Hey, I know about that.
Yeah, I know about that thing. That's a real thing that I like.
Yeah,
and so
to me, what I was kind of thinking that was like you said is that it was kind of something she drew strength from, and it's like when she almost like putting on armor almost. Like, this is she's a strong fighter, and so when Abra is thinking that she's going to go into battle almost, that this is a way that I can appear.
It's my battle mode.
Because
Emerald's tough, so I'll look like Emerald.
This is how I will be tough. And then I don't know if since we're on that, I guess we'll just talk about it. Is because she had no eyes in that situation, and so that was something that I was pondering back to, because I was like, obviously it's a very unsettling visual, and I don't think anyone will deny that. Like, this little girl with no eyes coming at you, like, yikes. And so when I was thinking about it, I was like, I feel like there's probably got to be a bit more behind that, because, like, as much as it's an unsettling visual, to me this movie and franchise, and I like just the spirit of it, isn't going for cheap scares and the visuals just to be the visuals. And so I thought there's got to be a bit more meaning and substance behind it. And so what I was kind of thinking about, as I haven't even told you about this yet, and so this would kind of be my pitch of this theory about that, is that I thought that maybe she didn't need the eyes because they weren't fighting somewhere where she needed to see. They were on a plane that was in her head and then in Rose's head, and so that's not how she was seeing. It was a mental fight, and so she's almost like omnipotent in that situation, where she just knows and is just aware of what's happening since it's in her head.
Well, here's my
and so
alternate
that was kind of
here's my alternate take on that, is that, like, as they say, eyes are the window to the soul. And Abra, that little girl, was cute. And so to take away the eyes, she goes from a cute human girl to this horrifying being, you know? And so I think maybe it was partly just to set Rose the Hat off balance, to eliminate any sort of, aspect that may be considered cute, in order to just
unchildify her.
Yeah, exactly. Just that now she's, like, dehumanize her in a way, and that's not necessarily the right word, but just to make her more threatening, I think, maybe, because, and just, like,
what, I guess, like, all of that kind of ties together, right? Because, like, Rose knew she was powerful because she, like, kicked her. Like, when she tried to, like, pull the reach around on her, like, in the grocery store, right? She just said no and blasted her away. And she went back and freaked out with Crow over, all the
that was
things.
awesome. Or, this is not that same point, but when after they were done fighting out in the space part, when she kicked her out and blasted her off the thing, off the RV, that was awesome.
That was cool. It's like your soul almost has momentum, and when it hits your body again,
which is something they almost used in Doctor Strange when they're pushing his astral form in and the chair moves. But
the soul has weight. There you go. You heard it here first.
Weighty soul.
Weighty soul.
It's like the Egyptian thing. They weigh it on the feather. It's like it's like the feather of, it's not the feather of truth, but that's what I'm calling it. It's like
if your heart weighs more than the feather, you go to hell. Basically.
You go with.
Sounds like a witch hunt.
Or
it's a metaphor. Osiris. Osiris weighs your heart against the feather, and if it weighs more, then you go to the underworld.
You go chill with Anubis.
Yeah, exactly. While we're kind of on the whole mind plane thing, because I thought that was the really cool aspect of the movie, is like it took place in two different worlds. Right. It took place on, like, the real plane, right, or, like, the physical plane where people can get killed by gunfire, right? And it also took place in the mind plane where your finger can get ripped off in reality.
That was crazy.
Because it gets stuck in a file cabinet. That's like
really
the representation of a little girl's memories.
Oh, and like,
well, it wasn't. It was her. And then
that's that.
And then for Abra to go in and it was like, that was crazy too.
That was kind of like the point of what I was getting to with the whole mind plane thing. Like, I feel like I'm hanging on this whole, like, characters and the different visuals of the movie, like, telling us more about the characters a lot, but it felt like a big part of it, because, like, the thing that I kind of noticed, like, there were three kind of minds that we found ourselves in, right? We were in Abra's, which was like in her bedroom, and her memories were kind of stacked like a filing cabinet.
Yeah, and it only took up her one.
Yeah, and it was just the one wall in her little bedroom, right?
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool because it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
She's a little girl, like she obviously feels comfortable in her own mind because her representation of her mind is her bedroom.
Yeah.
While she's sleeping, and just the one wall is just this wall of filing cabinets, right? Like how old was she? She's like 12 or 13. Or something like this.
She was
Like,
not
yeah,
well,
I mean she hasn't lived all that much, right? Whereas in that same scene you make the jump into Rose's mind and it's this cathedral
Yeah.
bursting with documents and libraries, and it makes you think like, you said live long. How long have you lived?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but which is
Right.
something that you kind of get a bit of insight into, which they never really fully touch on how old the hat was.
But with Grandpa
But
Flick,
but Flick, they talk about
You've
you've
seen
seen Empires Fall, and
Yeah.
you were in Romans, and like,
It was like,
and
oh
so
my
it's
God.
like, oh man, this guy is old. And so
what
like,
an
I do-
evil
yeah,
man.
what an evil
Yeah,
man.
seriously,
And
yeah.
so I don't think that Rose was probably not quite as old as that, but she was
Clearly
obviously
very-
very old.
yeah.
I think Rose, like, wild guess, Rose was probably the first one Flick turned.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'd say
I
that.
Kinda
do,
seems
but then
like, 'cause
again,
she kind
I
of
do
seemed
think
like the de
that-
facto leader.
Yeah, but then I
Well,
do
yeah.
also think that this may be completely off base, but I do kind of think that their physical appearance and age was somewhat in line with their
Mhm.
bigger age, because Fleck was the oldest, and so he was a very old man. And so the other guys were all kind of in the middle, and so then I would peg them, like, I don't know, just off the top of my head,
Of your Rose the Hat?
off my Rose the Hat, as like maybe those guys are from like Victorian
Yeah.
ages or something like that,
I'm sure that
Well, I
if you
guess-
were invested enough, you
could
could
figure it
you
out.
could figure out if this is
Mhm.
how many years of worth of information Abra has at 13 or whatever it is.
Extrapolate to
With
Rose.
with however much Rose
Sure.
has,
That's
this is
something-
how many years old she is.
That's something for Matt Pat.
for the film theorists to figure out.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was kind of like even the fact that Rose's mind was this, and she bragged about it, right? My
Yeah.
mind is this grand cathedral.
Yeah.
Right, and suddenly we're inside it, and you really see how gigantic it is, but it was also like very grandiose, right? You kind of get the sense that Rose thinks very highly of herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like she's very self-assured
Mhm.
in that her mind is this cathedral
Yeah.
to
Beautiful.
basically to her own power.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
right.
also kind of that. You'll probably be able to think of it because I can't think of it this second. But that immortal complex where I've lived for so long and I'm untouchable,
forever.
and then now suddenly we figure out that you guys are vulnerable, and then she finds that out very quick. The
Mhm.
old man dies, and then all of her other guys die, and now she's alone, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not as immortal as I thought, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
And she even said that to Snakebite.
yeah,
She even said, "I said, live long, eat well,"
Yeah.
yeah.
or something.
Eat well,
I might
live
have
long,
that backwards.
yeah.
Eat well, live long. Not she didn't like. Who told you were immortal? But then
Yeah,
she
exactly.
like kind of got that reality check when
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
her friends died.
Yeah.
But like kind of. So then there was the third mind that we find ourselves in, right? And that's Danny's.
Mhm.
And I thought it was kind of interesting because we saw it in two separate locales, but they were both the same place, really, right? Like when Abra was showing him how to do the whole mind invasion thing, and she's like, push like this, bang, and we just see the flash of the Overlook's lobby,
Okay, yeah.
right? So like when your so I guess like when Danny's defenses are down, his mind is still his childhood nightmare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
As much as he tries to push it away, he never actually got away from it.
Yeah.
Because he spends all his time thinking about how am I going to keep this off,
Yeah.
right? And then the other one when he was more in control of it, so when he was boxing things up,
Mhm.
right? And when they went into his mind where Rose thought it was Abra's, but really it's Danny's.
Yeah.
They're in the Overlook maze.
Yeah.
Right, so the Overlook plays that central role in his mind, but it seemed like when he was more organized, he turned it into more of a fortress than it was
Yeah.
this wide open space
And
where
I-
his father chased his mom up the stairs with an axe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's I kind of like I really like what you've kind of extrapolated from that, and kind of another way of also looking at the maze is that Danny's life, it was trauma and then it was alcohol, and yes, he sort of came out on top, but his brain is essentially this
Mess.
tangled mess,
Yeah.
which is what the maze is.
And so
And so even though he can find somewhat order in it, like you said, boxing those up and pushing them into this maze, you know, hoping he'll never see them again because this maze is so vast and tangled.
Yeah.
You know, and he knows the maze well enough, but it's still this terrifying entanglement that you don't want to get lost
Well,
in.
and see, I think that's another thing is that I just thought of while Liam was talking about the maze, is that not only was one of his coping mechanisms was to box up the ghosts and demons, but something that I didn't think about until now is he was not only boxing them up, but he was boxing them up in a maze. So just like kind of thinking
It's
about
a
that
double layer.
idea is a double layer of defense basically
And just
for him.
pushing it
So
as
it's
far away as
So it's almost that
possible.
idea that even if they got out, they wouldn't be free.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
See that for now.
but yeah, where are we at right now? We're at about an hour.
The cameras are not
Yeah, do you want
doing
to just
well.
double check the
I
camera?
feel like almost that we should switch yours to the wide. All right, so we're back. We had a quick technical difficulties break. I lost my camera.
We're filming on 2 iPhones and a Canon DSLR that
Yeah.
doesn't shoot continuously.
No,
for
it
some
should
reason.
be our most reliable one, but for some reason it's not.
It's also
And-
not our most high quality
No,
one. Like
your
my
phone
phone,
is-
is better quality, which is
kind
like
of sad.
iPhone's
kind of
bad.
sad.
They're incredible.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And so
You know, like what's the
Mine's
point of
kinda
spending money on
disappointing
actual
me.
cameras when it's in your pocket at any given
Yeah.
moment?
I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
yeah, that's
exactly.
true.
But anyways, back.
No more close-ups on me.
Yeah, we're getting back at it now. And so, whenever at least Kieran and I watch movies, and I know you're kind of like this as well, is that the movie watching experience doesn't end after the movie is
I've
over.
been thinking about this movie
And it's
for
just,
the last 2 days.
you
man.
just keep thinking, and especially with Stephen King and his expanded universe,
Mhm.
Kieran and I are always looking for connections or theories on, you know, how
we
this
can
how we can
connect things.
connect things, you know, like because in the movie it's not always as obvious. The books kind of have, you know, sometimes have
They put it
direct
on a bit more,
characters, but the movies aren't always direct. Either they're not always super direct
In saying it, or-
interpretations,
Yeah.
or you know, there's changes or omissions, but we kind of want to theorize a little bit about some of the connections, or you know, just like kind of internal things about this movie even. And so one that Kieran and I kind of like right off the bat we kind of noticed is that something that kind of is consistent throughout the ability of shining, being able to shine, is the common denominator between all the people seems to be trauma.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Danny was like his arm got broken by his dad in a drunken fit, and then ever since then
Tony was
Tony was there.
Mm.
Dick Halloran said that his grandfather was a hateful person and took it out on him and his grandmother. All the Losers Club, who appear to be able to shine, all have these traumatic events within their life, and that's kind of a theory in and of itself.
Yeah.
If the Losers Club are truly shiners, that's kind of more of we got that from a film theory, and I don't really want to plug a giant channel on this, but you know, if you want to know more about that, we're not going to go super deep into that. But it seems to be that when there are characters who can shine, also present is severe trauma in their lives. Even with Snakebite Andy in this movie, it was clear that she had been wronged, you know, and potentially even assaulted by, you know, and like an older man, and which is why she decided to choose her targets in such a way. And that's why Kieran and I immediately in this show thought, Abra, she shines, and yet she has this really like supportive family.
Life.
Yeah. And so we kind of like
it's about the only case that I have seen
And again, we're not
the biggest.
biggest.
We don't know the most about these
into
things
this
and the
universe
books and all these things, but like it's the only one that I've seen in all of my knowledge of these things that doesn't stem from some sort of trauma. Like she seems to be pretty normal and pretty fine, and she goes through a heck of a lot of trauma in this movie, but the whole time she's had the power already, you know?
And so my theory in regards to that is that, you know, she's just kind of maybe this very rare kind of case, despite not ever experiencing a really horrible kind of a trauma. She was able to tap into the shine regardless, and because it wasn't sparked by some form of trauma, that's why she's so powerful, because it's shown that she's probably that she's
already not been tainted.
Yeah, because it seems like
right?
and it seems like maybe like people maybe develop the shine as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And they're always using half of their potential to fighting off of this trauma in their life. So if Abra doesn't need to be doing that, then she's got 100% of her shine at her disposal. And maybe by the end of the film, maybe she doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of this like caveat to it, is that by the end she has to start boxing up these horrible memories, because at the end she sees the woman and has to start blocking off these parts of her brain. So maybe by the end she's not this superpower at the beginning. And that's kind of another parallel, is that between the character Emerald and her, honestly, is that throughout this movie, Rose the Hat is kind of laying the seeds for this idea of you're one bad day away from being me, essentially. Like you're the only difference between us is time, I think is what she said. Yeah. And so, you know, the character of Emerald in Ruby is this sort of torn character between the side of good and the side of bad, and I don't know if that is meant to be kind of translated into this character, because by the end of the film she obviously is traumatized, and I don't know where that character will go forwards. I hope that she'll continue to be on the side of good. It seems like she will be, but
then you do also,
like, regardless of that, she's not going to be the same.
Yeah, and you do also see kind of that darkness in her.
And as much you deserve this, she always says,
you know, and
as much she's watching people die in agony.
Yeah, and like,
and it's true.
I won't lie, and it is true. Like the people that you were talking to were wicked, evil people who had wronged her deeply. Like, you know, but for a child to say that is as no matter how bad the person is, for the child to fully comprehend it and be able to look you in the eyes as you die and say you deserve this. That's
pretty dark.
Yeah.
I had a thought just now while you were saying that, because like the movie to me, kind of like the overarching like message of like the thing that was put in that medium, like kind of like the main message it felt to me was like the world is an ugly place. Right? And like if you're going to take any lesson from The Shining and Dr. Sleep, I think you can probably say it's that this movie was about this girl Abra learning in a horrifying fashion that the world is not a good place.
Yeah.
Right? Which like just like recently, like I've been having to come to grips with that fact in a much more visceral way than I've had to before. But when you were saying that, when she sees these like truly horrifying people dying in agony and she says, you deserve this, contrast that to Danny's reaction when he sees, like, he's legitimately horrified.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and I think the difference with that is that Abra is coming at it from a point of child's naivete, where this is justice, the world is ultimately just, the bad guys lose, the good guys win, and every time a bad guy dies, they deserved it and they had it coming.
Yeah, and
this is what had to happen.
Comprehend the complexity of each person.
She does.
And
I don't think
the full weight of death, and I do think she gets that in the movie because her father is killed, and she probably feels that pretty heavily.
That's kind of probably when she learns.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily, because she does say it after, doesn't she? Or maybe not. Yeah, she does, because she says it to the Crow guy. But yeah, it's just kind of like maybe she doesn't fully have this understanding of
she
life.
doesn't maybe have the maturity yet to understand.
It kind of seems like the movie is her coming to that understanding.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I think
definitely.
At the very end where she's talking to her mom after having been talking to Danny's ghost, like Danny dying in the hotel fire, I feel like ultimately cemented it for her.
Yeah.
Right. It was that, like, throughout the whole movie, every time a bad guy died, and like she decided, like, this is right. Mm-hmm. She took joy in hurting them.
Yeah.
Like, she was just grinning ear to ear while she was crushing Rose's finger in the file cabinet.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of the tricky area, right? Is like you want to say, they deserve that, but it's still horrific to watch.
It is
that happen to another person, right?
And it, as bad as this almost is, but here another possibility is that I wasn't necessarily thinking about is that after the baseball boy, she could have almost been desensitized
well, imagine
to it.
Seeing that.
Well, and that's the thing.
Me seeing it in a false movie, I was traumatized.
Exactly.
That was like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
After seeing that, how could you not look that person in the eyes and say, you deserve this?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And so that's the thing.
And like you said, this is her journey, and this is kind of coming to grips with this horrible world and this concept of death. In the end, she says, I was talking to Uncle Dan, and I've seen Dad too. We go on. That's not the end. And so in the end, she does understand death.
Don't stop.
Yeah. And it's also
she does understand in the end, and she doesn't have any more encounters with Rose the Hat or anything.
Yeah.
I think that she maybe starts to kind of understand, like, those people got what they deserved, but at the same time, like,
well, it was also something Danny
people
said,
also died. Like
Danny
the Crow
said
had said, we both lost good people.
Yes.
And so, like, maybe that perspective, I'm sorry that I'm kind of droning on here, but, like, I think that in the end there, kind of really, were these two kind of key figures in her life gone, that kind of helped to cement that idea in her head.
The two things that I was thinking. The one is that you said how she has no more encounters with Rose the Hat and things. And that was something that Danny said to her, was that you have to kind of, I don't remember the exact words or the exact time in the movie this was, but he kind of said to her, like, you can't dwell on these things because those people come back too if you do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, do you remember that?
I think I do,
And so I think that's probably part of it too, is that that's her putting it back, and so that those people don't haunt her as well.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I thought of just now, and it was a throwaway line in the movie, and I don't remember the exact context of it or what it was. But I think there was some sort of implication in the movie that the mom she was with was not her birth mom. And so that could be the stem of her trauma. And I could be wrong.
I don't think there was.
I think at some point, I want to say that it was at one of the points when the police were around. And I don't remember for sure. But I could be completely wrong. But I think that I maybe heard that at some point or had it implied. And so if that is true, maybe there was some sort of accident and her mother passed away when she was young, and that could be a stem.
I don't
for
recall.
her trauma.
I don't recall that at all. I just thought that was her.
So I did too, and I didn't question it. But I do. But clearly there is something to me that made me think that maybe there's something else.
Yeah,
and
like there is obviously a visual difference.
Well, but she
between the two,
she looked like
she was a little bit of a mix between the two
yeah.
parents. I just assumed that they
so did I.
that they were biologically
and so
related.
I think,
and she was like when she was a little kid, she was around like for that birthday party that we saw.
And so it would have had to be before
mom.
that. So she would have had to have been very young.
But anyways, before we kind of jump around too much, kind of going back to Abra's ability to shine, my other kind of take on that was that her entire life she loved magic. And believed she was magic because her name is Abra. That's that whole thing. Do you know any magical words? Abracadabra. Mm-hmm. And so if her whole life they said, "Oh, abracadabra, you're magical," maybe she sort of willed it into being. She was able to tap into the shining because her whole life she was told that she was special and magic, and that like, and I don't know, things started happening. And so like maybe there's another level to that maybe that's just something that, you know, just to kind of explain a little bit, like, and maybe there's not really anything to that, but you know, her whole life being like so interested in magic and believing that she's magic, like saying I can do magic too, you know, and then so she does.
Yeah, I can do that too.
Man, if my kid ever did that, I wouldn't be horrified. I'd be like, yes, good job, you're magic.
I don't believe you.
I would, because otherwise she suppresses, they suppressed her ability and she doesn't feel, you know, like
safe.
It's safe, you know. I would totally, like, of course you'd have to lay down rules and be like, you know, you can't do this to people, you can't show this in public, but I'd be like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. My kid is a superhero. You know? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But yeah.
There was a thought that popped into my head, because at the end of the movie, while Rose was fighting Dan, she dropped that line, like, how did we miss you?
Yeah.
Right? And when she starts inhaling, like there was very much an orgasmic quality to how the knot reacted when they pulled steam in.
Yeah.
But even when she was breathing in Danny's like painted steam, like you could see it wasn't white, it was yellow. Right? It was kind of brown and dirty. It's like, tastes like whiskey, this is delicious, or whatever. How did we miss you? It was like, obviously you missed him. You didn't find Abra until she was 12.
Yeah.
And when she accidentally stumbled across you guys killing this kid.
Yeah, she found you guys.
She found you. You didn't find her, right? And like it does seem that the Knot's process of finding shiners is very much sit in a place and wait till you get a signal.
Yeah.
Danny was like 6 years old when all the shit at the Overlook went down. Right? And you saw, right, like that point where he kind of crossed over after seeing Dick in the park on that bench, right? And he kind of accepted that.
You're the worst. I wish we had your angle so I could cut to your stupid face.
Where he kind of accepted that like this was just how it was,
yeah.
And he went in and confronted the lady and shut her away.
Yeah.
But even past that point, right? He was a little kid, like a little kid, even younger than the kid in Iowa.
Yeah.
Right. Of course they didn't find him. He was doing everything he could to shut it down.
Yeah.
Specifically for the reason that I don't want to deal with all the corruption coming out of the, like, leaking out of the Overlook back into my life because this hotel has its hooks in me and it doesn't want me to leave. Which kind of came full circle, right? It was kind of cool at the very last scene of the movie, at least where we saw Danny in the hotel, when the boiler lit on fire, and the first thing that happened was the fire closed off the door.
Yeah.
It was like the hotel. It was basically the hotel saying, "Fuck you, buddy.
You're coming with me.
Like, if you're taking me out, you're coming too."
Yeah.
Like, whoop, that's it.
And and so that was kind of a thought that I had. That was one of the questions that I was thinking about, is that line of how they missed him. And so, because that was that was what I was thinking about too, is that they're like either
because the Overlook got to him first.
Well, that, and it's either one is a bit of a joke and one is more serious. Is like there must be something with these powerful shiners that they can't detect, or there's something that they do to suppress it.
Yeah, and I think that...
or like the Knot is just real bad at their job. Like, you guys suck,
yeah,
man.
I think that...
you couldn't find the Professor X and Magneto of this universe.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Well, yeah, that's it's. I think it's more what Liam's saying. Like, Danny immediately did whatever he could to turn it off, and like Abra says, her parents didn't like it.
Yeah, and so
they tried to suppress it in her, so she didn't use it that often, obviously.
Something that I was thinking about, though, is that, like, because he was such a young kid, but my exception in my head that I was thinking about is that the whole time he was capturing the things in the boxes from the Overlook. And so, is that a purely mental thing going on, or does he, because to me, that was something you had to use your shine to do, is capture those guys. And so I was thinking like, and like we do see that it did, even when he was old, he was still capturing them,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's like he has been using it to some degree his whole life.
Okay, so but maybe the point there is that, right, like, things started getting really crazy with all the Overlook ghosts when they were at the Overlook.
Yeah.
Right? It could just be the case that, like Danny talked about the Overlook as, like he compared it to the Knot, where he said the Knot are hungry people.
Mm-hmm.
The Overlook is it's just a hungry place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Maybe it's the case that, like, it's obviously not entirely localized to the Overlook, because once Danny had been there and that place had gotten its hooks in him, he kept seeing the ghosts around. But maybe it's the case that far away from it, these ghosts just don't have... It's like a 1/r² decrease in the power of the ghosts as they get away from the Overlook. So you don't have to shine so much to lock them away.
That actually kind of really builds into kind of another theory that I have I want to talk about.
I've got some kind of question theory for that
and
same
so,
idea.
Yeah, like...
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. Everything comes together. But yeah, what else was I gonna say?
Well, here I have some stuff.
Yeah, sure. You go ahead.
Is that one of my big questions about the Overlook spirits or whatever they were was how exactly they work, because to me I was just curious about like what the deal was really was because like to me they always seemed kind of the embodiment of the evil of the hotel, right? But, like, they weren't necessarily tethered to the hotel because they followed Danny for most of his life, right? Mm-hmm. But then, like, they were also captured by him. And so, like, what I was trying to kind of figure out is how kind of they work, because, like, I thought that they were the hotel and the evil and part of it, you know? But then they followed him, and we see they followed Abra. And so, to me, it was like... part of it was, yes, the trauma that they suffered and the evil partially latched in them. But then if there was another Shiner to go to the Overlook while Danny's out here, like, how does that work? Is it part of the evil is just now in Danny and that's embodied through those things?
That's what I think.
You know?
It really leads into my kind of connections to it, essentially.
Yeah, because, like, the thing...
Wait, as weird as it seems.
Yeah, and I'll just finish... I've got a little more here. It's just that because Abra saw them after too, just like Danny, right? And so it's kind of like they're tethered to both of these guys through the trauma, and this was the big thing. And so it makes sense if what they are is the evil is kind of in them now, almost a piece of the hotel, and that's their embodiment, and
like
almost kind of Horcrux creating them because. The thing is that to me it was always kind of like if they were the evil of the hotel and they followed Danny for his life, then it makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, the hotel was destroyed and they were still coming for Abra. And so if they're tethered to her and part of it is the evil of the hotel that's now in her, that's weird, right?
That's kind of spooky.
I think that's right. I think it's like it's kind of analogous to the kind of corruption that like members of the Knot had to undergo to like be given the gift of immortality, and they're basically just fucking soul vampires. Yeah. But like it kind of seems like a similar but different sort of corruption, where rather than they've entered into this contract willingly, right? Yeah. Because in every case where Rose was trying to get somebody to turn, she said, "I'm gonna make you an offer that I don't usually make." Right? She didn't say, "You're one of us now. Come on, like we're gonna force you to do this." No, she said, "Look, I'm gonna make you an offer. I don't usually do this, but I'm making you an offer." So those people are entering into it willingly. Whereas it seemed to me with the Overlook Hotel and in The Shining especially, these are people that died there. Yeah. Right? Like the hotel is just rather than like a distributed kind of evil thing like the Knot was, it seems like the hotel is like a different and maybe even more sinister thing. Yeah. Yes. Where rather than say, "Hey, if you're willing, join me," it says, "Oh, you're here? You're not leaving.
Well, let me
And
just
here we-
pose
You're a
this.
part. I'm a part
I
of
have
you
one
now.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm a
exactly.
part of you now.
Yeah.
And if you
Exactly.
die here while I'm a part of you,
You're mine.
you're mine.
Yeah.
And now you're kind of my
And-
Which is
appendages.
exactly what happened
Weirdly.
to Jack Torrance.
Yes.
Exactly.
it is.
Because the one
Exactly.
caretaker before, who I think, if I'm getting this wrong, I'm sorry, but Delbert Grady,
Mhm.
the
Oh,
guy,
that's right.
the guy who, like, kind of inducted Jack,
Yeah.
essentially, he died there and then was the bartender. Jack, like, died there and then was now the
Part of it,
bartender.
yeah.
So I think that, on top of, like we're saying, the Overlook kind of sprinkling itself into each of these people, if it really gets its hold in, it kind of can take over your appearance, at least.
It corrupts you. It corrupts you entirely.
Yeah.
Like, it corrupts you to the point where your immortal soul is now not this pure thing
Mhm.
because you lived and you died, but rather it's bent to this this physical place's
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, and it kind of also it builds back again into sort of that deal, is that the Overlook Hotel, you know, what's the word? Dang it! It's such a simple word. When a ghost enters your body, possesses. The Overlook possessed Jack,
Yeah.
and that same thing happened to Delbert Grady. He killed his twin girls.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
With an axe, and then in exchange, you know, like the Overlook put itself into him, and then it took him. You know, like it's sort of this twisted deal
Yeah.
that we give you this power, we take your physical body, and then we take what else is left.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just kind of a quick theory that I had, was that because I was a bit more, like, I don't know why I didn't write this down, but well, like, kind of my last thing about the spirits, or again, like, spirits, I guess, of the Overlook, is that this was a line that I noticed when we were watching it, is that Danny says, when Rose sees the boxes and is like, what is this? And Danny's like, oh, when he opens them or whatever, but the line he says is, and they're hungry. Or he says, and they're starving. And so, to me, and then it seemed like they worked the same as the knot once he released them. And so to me, it was strange, because I never really considered the fact that in The Shining, those spirits and things were trying to eat Danny, you know? But then it makes sense, because the bathroom woman was coming after him. The twins want to say, come play with us, you know, forever, right? And so it's like, okay, I guess, like, they wanted him, right? And so I was like, but wait, why are they any different than some of the other things we see? But here's the thing, is that we're kind of led to believe that the hotel has feasted on shiners throughout the years, right?
Yeah, because he says, like, this place is dangerous for people like us,
Yes.
specifically.
And so, something that I was thinking is maybe the fact that it has such a longevity and the spirits there are so prominent is because it is basically like the knot, and it does the same thing, and like, and that is the reason why certain spirits like Dick Halloran disappeared over time, because he wasn't using his form and eating steam of shiners. He wasn't using it for evil, and so he disappeared over time. But the ones at the Overlook stayed there, and they were there forever, you know? And so I was thinking maybe it works the same when you're a spirit ghost.
Yeah.
Is that if you feast on them, you can preserve your little ghost body.
Well, you know what, that it kind of steps on the thought that we had, where the Overlook kind of leaves a bit of it in each person, because like he said, they're hungry, and only after he opened his boxes did any of those spirits actually appear in the Overlook.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is they were.
So
that's why I was
so is
wondering.
it kind of it must be just sort of one person at a time, because it was condemned, because Danny was the only one who was able to escape them, so I guess they were all latched on to him specifically.
It almost felt like it was the hotel reaching out for him.
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
right?
and that's what Dick had said.
And honestly, that thought being that the spirits of the hotel appearing in his life, tormenting him like that, if that's the case, that's the hotel reaching out to him, that's even more, if that's true, that's even more chilling at the end when the lady's in Abra's bathroom.
Yeah.
Because the hotel burned down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
And so they're still around somehow.
So if that's the case, then it's deeper than the structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just this localized spatial instantiation of
Yeah, and I think
this
that
specific kind of evil.
That's maybe the bigger, kind of deeper, more imposing kind of meaning behind that at the end is just kind of like...
Is that we didn't defeat it.
Is like, it's kind of just a nice thing of like, oh, now Abra's taking up the mantle that Danny was doing and trapping all these things.
And it's like,
but
wait,
when you think
why
about
does
it...
she have to do that?
Why are
Oh
they
my
still
goodness.
around?
Yeah.
And this is perfect. This is the perfect
Take us
segue
in.
into this other theory that we have, which is that all the connections that I saw into sort of it and Pennywise and the spirit of Pennywise. And so, taking into account that theory that the Losers Club were all shiners. And now this is also spoilers for it. Chapter 1, and I'll try not to go too in depth with chapter 2 because I know you guys haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna check that.
Yeah, I got it.
And so, but just spoilers if you haven't seen that. Maybe I'll try and put a time code in if you want to skip ahead and skip the it theory part. But anyways, if the Losers Club are indeed shiners, Kieran and I kind of came up with the idea that Derry is essentially Pennywise's
home base.
Home base, feeding ground.
Did you read the book?
Well, yeah, and
that's
exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And I don't know if this is directly said in the book, but what we kind of piece together is that Pennywise is essentially creating this hateful atmosphere in Derry, which in turn creates shiners because it creates trauma, which are then more potent souls for him to devour, just like Rose the Hat and them did.
It's got a positive
better steam.
Yeah.
Sure.
And fear is one of Pennywise's bigger.
Yeah, my thing
things.
one of the things that I said, that I observed was that
it purifies
one thing is that
steam.
it purifies it, and I was doing some research, and in the book, the definition kind of was that the steam is produced when a shiner, quote, dies in pain.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they elaborated and said that it's pain and fear purify the steam. And so I think that kind of maybe provides almost insight into Pennywise's whole shtick.
Exactly.
Is that he relies so heavily on them being afraid of
just
him,
tormenting him.
And so if they're afraid, that gives him more power.
And that gives the payoff
for him.
It gives it more potent of a payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, something that we were a little bit unclear on, and maybe you have some of the answers for us, is that. And maybe it's just sort of a movie choice that is a little bit inaccurate, is that sometimes Pennywise takes victims down into his lair and he does the deadlights on them and takes their soul, which I think could essentially be equated to taking a shiner's steam without killing them.
Sure.
But then sometimes he just eats kids, like Georgie, and in it, chapter 2, this girl with a birthmark, he just straight up eats her. And so I kind of wondered if, maybe the ones where he just eats them is a quick steam fix, where he just kills them in pain and then, quickly takes their steam without having to do the deadlights.
And also kind of a combination of a quick steam fix and it just incites chaos.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe those
creates
ones
more fear.
Yeah,
Exactly.
creates trauma for whoever's brother that was, Bill, is now
10 years down the line.
Yeah.
10 years down the line is still traumatized by this and is still, subject to its terror. Yeah. And so
see, that's interesting that you came to that conclusion, because later in the novel, like it's a huge book.
Yeah.
It's like an 1,100-page book. But later in the novel, it's pretty much said outright that it is this just primal thing
Yeah.
from
Outer space.
from not from out, like from beyond outer space. Right? It's this primal evil. It's like everything that is wrong with the universe embodied, and it crash landed on Earth.
Yeah, in
where Derry is,
Yeah.
basically when dinosaurs were walking around.
Yeah.
Right? And it sat there for millennia until it could start to feed on stuff.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the whole point. What it did was like it just created this atmosphere of fear and just acceptance of fear.
Yeah.
Like, cause that's the kind of interesting thing about Derry is that the adults just kind of accept
They
that
just don't care.
this is the way it is.
Yeah.
They just are completely apathetic.
And
And that's even scarier.
Yeah, and that's perfectly exemplified in the first movie when Henry Bauer is cutting his name into Ben.
That couple
just drives by and
that's
looks at him.
That's a scene right out of the book, actually.
Yeah. And then also at the beginning of the first movie, I won't say too much, it begins with the second movie, sorry. It just starts with just a hate crime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's set in like the modern day where these things are, you know, and like obviously hate crimes still happen and that's a horrible thing, but usually they don't happen so blatantly, or at least I would hope that they don't.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess
It
it depends where you are, but you know, just there's such a hateful attitude and people just don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, keeping in mind, like you said, that it is just the embodiment of just everything evil. I have a theory that the Knot may be sort of these disciples of Pennywise, and not necessarily disciples.
I have just two things before that.
Sure.
One is that I think possibly that I don't know that it's the same, but I think that there's maybe some, obviously there are some similarities, but I think like you said, that it was this terror that came from beyond the universe or whatever and is the embodiment of all evil things. I think that there's some of that almost same energy and ideals in the Overlook.
I was going to build to that as well.
Right? You know, and so like I think that there's something to be said with that, and you can come back to that. And then I do have some ideas about the Knot that I do think are different than what you have.
Sure. So. And so what my kind of idea is that, you know, I don't think that maybe they ever interacted directly with Pennywise, but maybe sort of the similar energy or spirit is kind of what enables them to do what they do. Because I noticed a lot of similarities right from the start. A, preying on children who are shiners. You know, B, you know, maybe I won't do ABC because there's actually kind of just more of a hodgepodge. 2, 8, 2, 12, 7, X. But anyways, more similarities that I saw is that when they were feeding and when they were dying, their eyes glowed.
Yeah.
Which is similar to Pennywise's deadlights, which are the tools that he uses to feed on souls, which is essentially steam. Another one is that when they were turning Snakebite Andy, they sort of did this chant, and some of it was in another language, and that gave me vibes of the Ritual of Chud, because at least in It Chapter 2, part of that sort of chant and ritual is Mike, you know, speaking the language of the First Nations people who tried it the first time, and the second movie might be different from what happens in the book.
It's pretty much on.
But like that, partly chanting in this other language, and so maybe like, because obviously these First Nations people were able to sort of channel some sort of a magic of their own in order to somewhat contain Pennywise. And so maybe it's that sort of magic that the Knot has tapped into, where they're able to, you know, and it is outright said that they are shiners who decided to then tap into something else and become, you know, something else.
Yeah.
you know? And so I wonder if that thing that they tapped into has something to do with Pennywise. And like you say, the other similarity to Pennywise is the Overlook. This spirit of evil and fear that feeds on shiners.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, maybe it's just sort of a separate evil, or like, you know, like a sister parasite to Pennywise that crash landed there instead. And instead of taking the persona of a clown, it took the persona of
the structure
a hotel
that was built on top of it.
That could be interesting, actually, because it's not like they, I don't know,
because
maybe
Pennywise is a shapeshifter.
He is, and
who
maybe
can take
in
the
the
form
books,
of people who have
maybe
existed.
I don't know if in the books they go into any sort of detail about the structure and maybe foundations of the Overlook, but like if Pennywise just can embody whatever he really needs to look like, then who's to say that same kind of ideal, like the idea of that kind of spirit, can't just embody itself into a hotel.
In a hotel,
not like necessarily become a hotel, like shapeshift into it, but like
but
just
at least
put itself
manipulate
into it.
the environments there,
exactly.
because Pennywise
He
is
does do that,
shown to create entire environments. In the second movie, at least, when they're in his cave, all of a sudden Beverly's in the bathroom locker that she was tormented in the first movie, and Ben is in their old secret hideout, you know? So he can obviously not necessarily create these places, but trick your mind into thinking that you are in these places, you know? And so those are just interesting similarities to the Pennywise creature that kind of are sprinkled throughout these other you know, movies and books and stuff.
Maybe it's less of a not taking their powers specifically from Pennywise and the whatever is in the Overlook being a similar sister thing. Maybe it's just the case that, like, in this universe, like, evil has a certain, like, evil in any form has a certain character to it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas, like, it's like, because in all of these cases, like, the similarity I keep seeing is it's a matter of corruption. Like, the knot corrupts its members through this ritual, right? Like literally, well, oh man, what was it she said? Andy's like, I felt like I was dying, and Rose just looked at her and said, yeah, you did.
Yeah,
and that's something that I wanted to get into.
Right, so maybe that's the thing, is like, it corrupts these people through total and complete loss of humanity.
Yeah.
And just morphs them into this different thing, in the same way that the Overlook, right, its victims must die before the Overlook truly has control over them, or whatever the Overlook is sitting on, or whatever kind of evil thing is living there. And Pennywise, in a similar vein, is just, like, seems to me the essence of corruption embodied.
Yeah.
Right? A thing that feeds on fear and literally, like, sucks the terrified souls out of children and leaves them hanging suspended in space forever, right? Can shapeshift into whatever frightens a person most, right? Like, it's interesting you're drawing connections there, because it almost seems like varying degrees of Pennywise, right? It's like the Pennywise character is just it in its full form.
Yeah.
The Overlook is kind of like shares the localization idea, but is a little more subtle in how it does things.
Different in execution.
It doesn't grab children, pull them into drains, and leave their arm lying there.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little more subtle in how it does things, whereas the Knot is this truly mobile, but still localized in that they're clearly aware of each other.
Yeah.
Because in that awesome gunfight scene, every time one of the members cycles, Rose feels it very viscerally.
Yeah.
Right, so it's almost like it's localized to that group.
But
that group is mobile.
Was also that Rose was a looker, and she was almost probably using her same kind of eagle eye view.
But then just before we move on, I just wanted to say that, like you say, then maybe it's that since all these beings draw from sort of the same just evil, not draw from, but are this sort of same evil.
Share the character.
Yeah, just because of that fact, you know, this evil spirit needs to be fed by the soul of pure people, you know, or the soul of pure shiners. Well, they're children.
But it's better if they are.
But it's better if they are, you know.
And then just the one thing that I was going to point out is that in your varying degrees is like you said, Pennywise is he's very upfront about it. He's very upfront about the way he does things. He'll come out and kill you. But the Overlook is much more seductive in its methods, I think.
Well, it depends on the case.
Well,
it does, but
it gives you what you want. It's like, here's your vice.
It does, and like, but like, it got to Jack over the matter of months. You know, like if that was Pennywise, he doesn't play the long game.
Much.
You know.
Well, he sort of does.
Like he'll mess around.
Not when he's acting.
Like he'll play around, but when he's going for it, he's gonna try and get you.
Yeah.
You know. But like the Overlook, it just kind of played around a bit, you know, like it slowly put its seeds into Jack, who was clearly a disturbed person to begin with, and I think that's part of the reason that he was vulnerable, and it knew immediately that it's like, hey, we can like come to us, you know.
Talk about playing the long game. He went back anyway.
Yeah.
Trapped all its emissaries or whatever, but he still wound up back there. And as soon as he walked in the door, the lights turned on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just one other similarity kind of between the Overlook and Pennywise, like we said, the Overlook kind of grabs on and it doesn't really ever let go. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this was an addition. Again, I haven't read the book, but in the second movie, Mike says, we have to kill it now, because it, among also being this interdimensional evil clown, it's also a virus, and you will eventually become so depressed and disturbed by it that you'll just kill yourself, which is what happens to one of the main Losers Club members. And so that's kind of similar, is that the Overlook kind of latched on to Danny and followed him, and now that Danny's gone, it latched on to Abra and followed her.
Yeah, that is an interesting
And so, like, the Losers Club, that's kind of is what made the stakes so high for them, is that, you know, if they didn't do it in this cycle of 27 years, they would die, you know, before they got a chance to write it, you know?
Well, with that, I guess I'll kind of go in, because you were saying your not theories. I'll kind of go into some things that I found in my brief research, and like kind of just like some things that I was thinking about them. And so kind of like the first thing that I had written is that, like, in the kind of brief research I did, is in the book, like it is basically like they have their own shine abilities, and so like it's cemented in the book. Like it's pretty obvious in the movie, but like just for concrete, it's said in the book that they're shiners, you know. But like, so kind of into my speculation was like, and obviously they're like shiners through various points in time, and like they're essentially cannibals, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and they're eating the other shiners, and like eating someone's soul is like taking your humanity away again, you know.
Exactly.
And so like, and it like, this was something, is that it was implied many times and kind of said, is that they're not human.
At least not anymore.
And that was something that I hung on to, and it was something that I was kind of considering and kind of thinking about, because I know that it obviously is in the sense of like they're dehumanized, and like this is not like, they don't count as a human anymore. But I was wondering if there was potentially some sort of more meaning behind that, if they were physically, not necessarily physically, but like something else
in
now.
Spirit, actually,
like a monster, like something else, you know.
They certainly don't die like humans.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like, and so my big example of that was when Snakebite says that she felt like she was dying, and Hat says you did. Like, that to me is like, well, now not only it's referred to that they aren't human, but you died and came back, and so it's like, well, it's really weird. And here's another thing:
that could be more of a metaphorical, like your humanity is
Yeah.
gone, like her soul, like as a human, is now gone, and now because when they killed the baseball boy, and Snakebite Andy like didn't care, you know, despite being what seemed to be sort of a more like
it was 8 years later, but
but she seemed when we met her, what she was doing was more out of justice. You know, she was trying to like, you know,
doing bad things for the right reasons.
Yeah, like she was trying to get back at cheaters and pedophiles, which is a pretty noble cause to do. And then all of a sudden you're just the worst thing possible.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe in that ritual, that was her humanity dying, at least. So she's not a human anymore, like you say.
That I was just thinking about her, just kind of a side note, is what a bad deal for her. You're gonna live for so long. She would have lived longer had she not gone with them.
That's true.
Because it was only an 8-year gap.
Yeah.
She didn't have 100 extra years.
And she became just the worst.
You became the worst human and then died horribly, no better off.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of funny. But yeah, and so I was wondering if it was more than just like the lack of humanity, like morally and emotionally, you know, and like if it was like something like fundamentally changed when they feed on other shiners. And so I was thinking kind of like it's maybe to do with kind of the same evil as the hotel, because those spirits that Danny let go went and immediately feasted on Rose the Hat, and it's kind of the same thing that they did. And so it's like just kind of like, I don't know, like kind of drawing the connection between the two cannibalistic things you see in the movie, the knot and the hotel, are the things that eat the shiners. And so it's like Dick and Danny didn't feel the need to feed afterwards once they were force ghosts, you know? Like, they weren't eating so much. And so that, I think, was kind of, like, stems into, like, the spirit's longevity and, like, part of that. And maybe part of that is why they had to die before, is because the spirits feed on it, and so they're just fueling their husk, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that they're spirits at that point, I saw Danny and Dick as different.
Yeah,
you know, when Dick said, he said like this place is like a dream, you know. So he kind of is in an afterlife at this point, and he just kind of takes trips back to here, back to the human realm. And so, like, I think that's definitely different from the spirits of the hotel.
Yeah, they're a lot more
those ones
sinister.
are trapped, damned spirits.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so but that could be similar to, maybe that's what the knot is they've kill themselves, but then using the because the first ritual was feeding, was feeding Andy the steam, which is the soul of a dead child, and so it's essentially killing her, but then feeding her as essentially the same creature as what's in the Overlook. And so I wonder, but, with that, still different.
I wonder, this is kind of a
more dependent on steam.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird theory, but could it be that they are almost becoming their own miniature versions of the Overlook when they do that? Because the Overlook is this big thing, and we see in the movie that it feeds on the shiners, and it's not necessarily alive. And so when they do that, do you think that they become perhaps like the embodiment of
kind of
like the same way that the Overlook traps spirits and feeds on them to continue? Do you think that maybe their body is now that same kind of vessel?
Could be.
Perhaps.
And it kind of goes back to the idea that they're all kind of stemming, or maybe like from the same sort of an evil, you know, or at least they're all kind of inspired by the same darkness.
That's my thought, is that they're different kinds of things.
Yeah.
But they run on the same energy source.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like a light and a microphone both use electricity.
Yeah.
But in different ways.
Yeah.
But a light is not a microphone.
It's not a microphone. It's a terrible analogy.
Yeah. Do you have any more things, Aidan? Kind of theories or anything?
I don't think I had any more theories, really.
Because I had a couple more things I wanted to touch on. Almost some things like almost some questions that I wanted to kind of pose to you guys and
Sure,
kind of
yeah.
see what we could think of, and I think that would be kind of a good way to
kind of wrap it
kind
up.
of start to end it, and like some good ideas for like if my questions ask you guys, if anyone watches this and you have some sort of idea of what the answer to this could be,
Put it in the
Tell
comments.
us.
then definitely tell us, because
Please,
I'm
God,
super
tell us.
interested in what it could be.
And we'll definitely we'll probably
absolutely
address those directly.
Yeah.
So if
Definitely.
you ask us questions, we'll answer you.
Yeah. Great part of having no fan base.
Is that
We can interact with all of our
we're a
fans.
very tight community.
Yes, very tight community is a good way of putting it. Okay, and so let's see. My first thing, let's see, is that now that Abra is she's trapping these spirits from the Overlook and all of these experiences in her childhood, and Danny to now she's kind of almost taken his mantle of what this was something that I kind of thought would be the next step in his progression, is that do you think that she might now become almost this demon hunter, like, because it's pretty they say that like there's more of these people out there, like there's more good, there's more bad, and there's other things. And so to me it was almost like maybe as she gets older she traps all the things from the Overlook, but then she almost goes out of her way to seek out these evils because she knows they're out there.
And she's quite the detective
She's
already.
quite the detective. She's very powerful and she's very empathetic. And so to me it seems like that almost situation where she knows these things are happening and she's not going to be able to shut them out forever.
Yeah.
And so she'll probably search out of her way to find other groups like the Knot and put an end to them.
Yeah.
Do you think it's better for the Knot to be dead than what they are?
In what sense?
It seems to me that they're just suffering all the time.
Yeah.
Without steam. Because at any hint of steam, they rush it. Like Grandpa Flick died, oh, we're all sad.
Yeah, that was a cool scene. That was
interesting
scene.
because
So
it was kind of like a lack of caring.
That's my thought. I just had this connection. Like they called him Dr. Sleep because he helped these old people die.
Yeah, got it.
Is it kind of seems he's doing the same thing with the Knot. He's helping them die.
Yeah.
Right? They took this terrible turn where they thought it was a good deal. And in my head, it definitely seems like they're rationalizing it to say this was a great deal that we took.
Yeah.
That's a shitty deal.
Oh,
yeah.
Living forever
in pain and killing children.
hungry.
Yeah.
For kids.
Yeah.
Seems like a shitty deal. Like every time he shot one of those things, like I'm thinking back on it now, it's kind of that parallel, right? He's just helped someone else die.
Yeah.
Help someone find peace.
It's also it's kind of like
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not just one, this is a side thing, is that's something kind of interesting that I think they captured in the movie, that the only one that it didn't really show it in was Snakebite Andy, because she was happy because she won. But something that you saw in a lot of the other guys, definitely Flick and Rose, was this fear. And I think that was really interesting because it's like...
Well, because these are obviously the kind of people that are the most terrified of death. Because they're willing to do whatever it takes. They're willing to do whatever it takes
to be alive. And they haven't even really pondered the idea of their own mortality.
Yeah.
Because they've been alive for so long and not had to deal with it. And so then, like, for them to have the true fear of, like, I'm done.
It's interesting.
I think that's a really interesting thing.
And maybe that's because you exempted Andy from that, and that's why she's the exception. She hasn't lived for that long.
That's a good point. Like what they're doing, they feel like they're cheating death and getting out of it. Really, all they're doing is pushing that externality onto other people because other people have to die to keep them alive, right? Those lives have to get cut short for theirs to be extended.
It's the worst trade.
Like Death's book, like Death personified, his books are balanced no matter what.
Yeah.
He's getting the same amount of life out of these people, right? It's just, like, in a big way, the movie was about death and loss and how do you deal with it.
Another thing that I had said or thought about is that Danny, and I think this was part of the thing that I was thinking about as the kind of demon hunter of Abra, is when Danny's talking to her. I think at the end he says something like there are a lot of people like them and worse out there. And so to me, that was maybe a reference to Pennywise. It's like there are worse things out there, and not only just Pennywise, but anything else in the Stephen King lore, you know, and also just other people like the Knot.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a very interesting line.
Yeah, for sure.
And another question, I have I think two more kind of questions. One is that I was wondering if Danny was maybe stronger because of the guys that he had captured. If that made him stronger or weaker. Like
I just wanted to go back. What was the question that you started on? We kind of like turned it into another question.
Hunter, right?
Being a demon
Demon
hunter,
Hunter
right?
kind of
Sorry,
thing,
I kind of forgot.
what I was thinking about is that I was wondering how that maybe weighed on him, like what effect that had on him. If maybe now if it almost had the effect of this having steam. He's got the power of these guys now, or maybe it weighed him down.
I think
like
it weighed him down.
Yeah.
I think the point of that was kind of like we talked about, that he was boxing that up and pushing it down.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's kind of the double take. Yeah, and that's the double take at the end is when you see Abra walk into the bathroom, is because it's like, oh, she's gonna start boxing them up, but then you think, oh, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
You know, because when Danny did it, it was more of a survival instinct, really, and it wasn't necessarily a healthy one.
Yeah.
And like just like his alcoholism, he just essentially is bottling them up and keeping them hidden. And you know, like he drowned out his shine with drinking, he's just scooping them up, putting them in a box. I'm never thinking about it again. Which isn't necessarily the most healthy way to deal with your trauma. The only way he finally got over it was by opening those boxes, you know, absorbing them into his being and resisting it.
Going to the hotel, facing down his father.
Facing everything that he didn't want to become, his father, becoming this horrible axe-wielding maniac, and overcoming it. Beating it.
Yeah. One thing that you guys have touched on is that I was wondering is, like, do you guys think that his alcoholism dulled it? Like, you think that was something that definitely dulled his shine?
I think he was absurdly powerful anyway. I think Danny Torrance is probably just an absurdly powerful shiner the entire time.
But like, for almost not necessarily dulled his power, but more so almost like hid him.
Yeah, I think it definitely did for most of his life, because I think that it's implied that is one of the reasons he turned to alcoholism. Just like, obviously it's the trauma, but also to like kind of hide the shine and make sure it doesn't happen. And it is a biological, there's a genetic aspect to it, but
he's just terrified of what it brings, right? Like Halloran told him, you're like a 1,000,000-watt battery and everything in this place is gonna come running to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think basically my last thing, I think my last thing is something that you touched on, is kind of a big question that I have was the significance on Dr. Sleep over the entire narrative of the story.
What I really liked the first time that came up was the guy goes Doc.
Yeah.
And he calls him that because that's what his mom called him, and that's what Dick calls him. And I really kind of like that because it was sort of a really kind of seamless transition into his new sort of evolved version.
His new moniker.
Yeah. You know,
moniker. I just said it.
Oh.
You inceptioned me.
Yeah, and so I really kind of liked you incepted me.
Yeah, totally did.
I really kind of liked how they transitioned into, and I kind of also liked how he called himself Dan instead of Danny.
Just kind of to
separate himself from his trauma and be a new man.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought so too. But yeah, and so that was kind of my my thought is what you guys thought, and like just kind of to discuss what we think, because obviously it's important enough to be the name of the book and the name of the movie, and like just what more it means and the significance beyond just him helping these old people die.
Well, that's how it started, right? He has the ability to ease their way and reassure them, right? Like these, like in every case that we saw where it was an old person in the hospice dying, they were terrified.
Yeah.
Right? It was this ability he had to ease their way through it and saying, we don't end.
Yeah.
Don't worry. There's more.
Yeah.
Right? It starts there, and then it turns into something else entirely when he starts helping Abba.
Yeah,
right?
and I think kind of building off something you had said before is that I think it's kind of this narrative, and I think that partially with what we were saying is confronting his past demons and all of these things, I think that something it could mean, tying into him helping these old people pass, is putting the past and these evils to rest.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I think that Dr. Sleep, the persona, is essentially Danny becoming a good person again and becoming kind of whole, because for a long time he just ran.
Yeah.
He just ran away from his problems. He stole from that lady and she ended up dying.
And screwed them away.
She ended up, her and her baby both died. He saw them in their zombified forms, and maybe that was just a dream.
I think that was that was just his trauma, because he did put the money back.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Took it. They would have shown him put it back if they meant to. I took note of that.
I thought he put it
Dick
back.
said, "Put that money back. You don't need it," and he just went, and he left. They
I
would
thought he
have
put it
showed
back.
him put it down if they wanted us to know that.
I thought it did do that, but maybe I'm wrong.
And he wouldn't have seen them in a guilt dream later
and that's the thing
had
is,
they survived.
I didn't know.
Had he not.
Yeah.
Had
And it
he
was
left
interesting.
it,
That
I
was
don't
something
think
interesting, was that
he would have
she
done all he
looked
could
like
for
the
them.
bathroom woman.
Yeah.
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 And it took me a minute
yeah.
to be like, oh, that's much younger. That's interesting.
Yeah,
And
and
that's why they showed the bracelet.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what makes like because what the fact that he shines the fact that he shines means that his dreams most likely depict reality in some way.
Okay, yeah, that makes
and
sense.
so I think that she probably died because
dead.
she may have she may have been dead right there. She might have OD'd.
That was something that I was thinking about too. Yeah.
And so he just put the baby there and was like,
left.
I won't
listen to what she
anything
said.
about this.
She's like, they haven't found us yet.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and so that was
what she said.
Yeah,
Yeah, she said,
and so
they
that
haven't
was really
found us
awful.
yet,
And so
Danny. And it was really only a few days later.
he starts
okay.
at the
He was rotten.
beginning
Okay,
from running.
They were definitely dead.
From running away from
Holy.
running away from the dead and these horrible things he's done, and then trying to put things right.
Holy.
Helping.
That's bad.
Helping. Yeah,
He's a bad dude.
yeah. But then your mistakes and your trauma don't define you. Is the whole point. That was still that was
and her child.
like that was a mistake. That was his darkest point,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
guess
when
so.
he came to this
That's
sort
when
of
he kinda
end of the line
came out of
town and started to become a better person because that was such an awful thing, and that was, the kind of this that's what the persona of Dr. Sleep represents. It's dark,
His journey. Yeah.
but then evolved into something more, helping to ease these people, like you say, putting things to rest, putting himself to rest in a way. In the end, he came, his character,
and like
his character
even
came
the
full
spirits
circle in
and
the
his-
end
the
because
demons of
he
his father.
he put his father's,
everything.
he became everything his father couldn't be.
Yeah.
He put that spirit to rest in that sense, and then after everything was tied up and everything was done, he was then able to rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing
That's right.
that I thought of that is probably the last thing or one of the last things is that there's an awesome flip on something they did in The Shining that we didn't actually touch on The Shining
Red Rum?
references. Red Rum.
Yeah,
was
that was really cool.
In The Shining, he's always going Red Rum, and the reveal in The Shining is when the mom trips and
And looks
sees in
in
the
the
mirror
Yeah.
and it says murder.
Mm-hmm.
In Dr. Sleep,
He
she writes what happened, they say like terrible, she says like terrible or whatever, and she says like what happened, like what did they do,
She would have written it.
and then
Murdered this way.
and so then he trips and falls in the mirror, and because it cracks he falls, looks up in the mirror and sees red rum. So then when he turns around, it's murder.
That was really cool.
That was really
I didn't
cool.
even
I thought.
catch that.
Yeah.
And it was just an amazing. It was the perfect way to do the flip on that mirror.
And it explains kind of some of the letters being backwards because she was just traumatized and she just goes cracks it into his wall.
How crazy is that? That's the like. She depicted it in one word.
Yeah, and
what
that's
happened?
Murder.
And that's the thing that
Oh.
kind of, and that was what
Yeah.
that's what his Shine Tony was trying to tell him all those years ago, and it was just that perfect coincidence, which was just like you get the chills when you think about it. When he falls, sees Red Rum, he's like, no way, turns around, you know, like
that was
I really
liked
good.
That. Yeah,
that was really good.
yeah.
I'm remembering the scene now.
Yeah, now that we all have
and
chills.
that was just about the worst thing I've ever seen. So like,
yeah,
this show is definitely
we didn't
not
really
for people
touch on
who
that.
aren't in really a great mind space, because
I guess should we brief? We don't have to go into depth about it, but there's one scene.
Well,
we
you'll
didn't really
know it
talk
when you
about,
see it.
and yeah, that's the thing is going into this movie. There, we kind of
it's
said
a heavy film.
We said at the top that there's. Yeah, it's not a casual watching movie, and there is, in particular, and if you've seen it, you'll know the scene.
You know what just occurred to me? That kid should get an Oscar.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We said that.
That's what we said.
That kid should get an award.
How did that kid channel that?
How do you do
know?
that?
Like,
and
crying and blubbering.
Yeah,
and Aidan
that
said,
was so. Oh my god.
Yeah, and Aidan said is like. How I couldn't even be a part of that scene as an actor.
I think that I saw just in my scrolling that the actress, what's her name? Ferguson. She plays Rose the Hat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently she broke down during that scene.
I can't imagine how you couldn't. Like that was ridiculous.
Horrendous.
And
you
it
know?
was
like,
so intense.
How did
like,
that kid encapsulate that so well?
Know.
Like that
it
kid,
was horrifying.
like a terrific job.
Yeah.
This
but
is what I was saying.
how were you able to channel that?
This is what I meant when I said like, for, I guess like what you could cursorily categorize as a horror movie.
Yeah.
The performances were amazing.
Absolutely.
Like
Very
they're
much.
like
I love you.
across
Yeah.
Like across the board, it was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that the girl who played Abra, she was really
She was
really
awesome.
good.
She was fantastic too.
You know?
She was awesome. She was amazing in every way.
spectacular.
And that was something kind of we touched on.
It felt real.
It did. It felt real. And this was something we touched on with the actors reprising roles of people that we've seen before, is that not only did they look enough like them, but they were able to embody those characters, like, just as their personas, you know? Like, when the guy that was Jack Torrance was on screen, it's... Jack Nicholson is Jack Nicholson, you know? And so for that guy to be Jack Torrance and for you not to question it when he's on screen is amazing, you know?
You know, it occurred to me when we were just talking about that scene and how I said it felt real.
Yeah.
There was a thing they did with the camera angles there too.
Yeah.
They shot it in such a way that for a lot of it felt like you were looking over their shoulders.
Yes.
In the same way that Abra was, and you got that shot in the middle where you looked over the front of Rose's shoulder and saw Abra standing there.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt for a lot of that scene like you were standing there behind them watching it.
Well, and not even that, but so much to put you over their shoulders. What that does cinematically is that makes you
a part of it.
Yeah,
that makes
you're
one of those doing that.
And when they weren't doing that, they made
you
it.
Were looking
you
up
were,
at
you
them.
were the kid.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
the camera angle, which was like
horrifying.
Horrible. Like just the thing that was the most awful about that was that kid's dialogue and noises in that scene. That was what made it the most horrendous part. And it's like, why couldn't you have just cut away? But they couldn't, because they needed to get that essence.
The worst line for me was right at the beginning of the scene when he said, "Are you gonna hurt me?" And she just looked him dead in the eye and said, "Yes, of course."
I hated it. I hated that
brutal.
so much.
And see, the thing is, and this was something that I was thinking about too, like you just said, is that it like you could have cut away. You could have, but it would not have had the same effect or the same weight, and it wouldn't have looked at those characters the same. You know, like now for the rest of the movie, you just are disgusted every time you see those characters.
You know exactly what they are, and I got like the stomach ache enough when they got they got Violet at the beginning. That little
absolutely.
Girl.
Like,
that was enough to make me go, I hate you so much.
And the way they did it with their coming out of the trees, it was horrible.
That was so
and I was
horrifying.
like, well, that was all I needed today.
Yeah.
And then that
yet
scene is
they
just,
took it 11 steps higher.
That's just about the worst
I have
thing
one more
you
thing.
could think of.
Yeah, but
It
anyways,
was- yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in a movie that I was having bodily reactions to the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been in a situation where I was just like viscerally feeling so many things at the same time.
yeah.
But the thing that keeps sticking out to me was like watching that scene. It was like all the way up my spine, all the way through my arms. You were getting that chill feeling.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
You just wanted it to stop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, all you wish you could do is just make them stop.
Yeah.
crazy.
You know, and that's so awful.
Yeah.
Super well done.
So let's move away from that before we finish this off. One kind of final thought of mine is that something
the
you kind of
12th final
notice.
thought.
Something you
It's the
kind of
Return of the
notice.
King.
This podcast has as many endings as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But
I feel like we'll be able to make that joke literally every week.
something I kind of notice about Stephen King's work, at least in the movies that I've seen, which means obviously I'm an expert on all things Stephen King, but there's such a and I think it's something he just likes to avoid out of sort of, you know, it would kind of constrain his ability to tell the story, but a complete lack of the justice system.
Yeah.
There were several points in this film where I went, did you call the police?
Yeah.
Like, when they dug up the kid's body.
Yeah.
It was like, did you call the police? When Abra's dad was killed, did you call the police? When Billy blew his brains out, did you call the police? You know, like, there were all these situations where, and like, obviously, I don't really want there to be a break in the film where they are questioning Danny on all these things.
Yeah.
But there were several points where just kind of the realist in me went, you called someone, right?
But do you know what calling the police does? In every single one of those situations,
Yeah,
they
it
were
gets Danny locked
they
up.
had, well, not just that, they had the knot right behind them.
Yeah.
Right
That's
when
true.
they were driving back to New Hampshire, they were right behind them. They drove in a couple hours later.
Yeah,
When they were
that's
driving back to the Overlook, she said she's following us. You know,
Yeah.
like, okay, so she's a few hours behind them.
It's true.
And they had
Calling
just slowed
calling
them
the
up.
police is
it's not gonna
police
help you.
reports
It's true.
and all of these things. And now Rose is there. She kills everyone in the station
Danny
because who would do anything to her?
Yeah,
Danny
exactly.
mentioned when the dad said that, that was the dad's response. Danny mentioned that. He said, these people are ancient, they have ties with everything.
They probably
It won't-
have the
it
have
won't be able
control
to
of
help
the police.
us.
Yeah. And that kind of is what
They're rich,
explained
they're
it away.
well-connected.
Yeah, they're rich and well
Yeah,
connected.
that essentially
And also-
explained it
They're not
away.
worried.
Also,
the
Danny
police.
and Billy had physical evidence at every single crime scene. So.
Yeah, and
Also not great.
And how do you explain that, right?
Exactly.
There's just a bunch of empty
Dug
clothing.
this child up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's just a bunch of empty clothing and a
Billy's
dead
dead.
guy.
Like, what?
How do you explain that? Obviously, suspect numero uno is the one survivor in that situation.
Homeboy
Who
with
is
the
literally shooting.
flamethrower, apparently.
Yeah, and and that's the other interesting
Dusting these
thing is
people.
that, like you said, these people are ancient and rich,
Yeah.
and it was sort of interesting that they chose to be these sort of traveling gypsies, you know, like these hippie people. It was just sort of an
Well,
odd
see,
choice,
the
you
thing
know,
is-
when you
is
could just
because-
be, you know, at the
They
top
have
of
to
the
be.
world.
But they have to be.
And they kind of
yes.
have to be these
They
nomadic.
have to be. Because they
traveling
have to be
people.
looking
Because they have to
around
be
for
feeding.
steam.
And that's another thing is
Another
that,
curse.
yeah,
They
and
can't enjoy their...
and something they said though is that
Exactly.
there are less and less shiners.
There's
Yes.
less steam in the world.
Yeah, and so I wondered if
interesting.
that meant that, like what did
What
that
does that
entail?
mean? Yeah.
Because shiners, like we talked about, are usually synonymous with trauma. So you'd think that there would be more, you know,
Or the same amount.
or at least the same amount, because you know, as you
It's not
said,
like things
this
have
movie
gotten
is about
exponentially better.
discovering how crappy the world is. You know,
But also, isn't it the case that the Shine is supposed to have family ties?
it's true.
So
It
how
could
long
be.
how long have these things been around feeding on kid shiners and cutting off shine lines?
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
true. And it could also just be that the world is also just sort of a less extraordinary place.
Yeah.
And
it's more
there's not-
it's more sedated.
Yeah.
Like it might still be terrible, but it's also more sedated.
And it
than
could be
was.
that there's less people worthy of having it.
or that there's the same amount, but it never manifests because there's just so much sedation.
Yeah,
and some people just don't
afraid of their.
Some people
their
maybe
shine.
just don't experience that trauma to unlock it in the first place.
Yeah,
there's a lot of reasons why it might not be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting final kind of question to ponder about why you think maybe there are less and less Chinese in the world.
Why is there less steam in the world?
And so that could maybe be our closing question. If anyone watches this and has watched to the end, what do you think the reason for that is?
Speculate, theorize. We welcome all comers.
And the other question I kind of have to viewers and listeners is, we haven't read all the way through Dr. Sleep. For Liam, it's been a little while, and so Liam will let us know. But if there are people listening or watching who have, I'm really curious to know how the entire third act went in the book, because I can't really see it going a different way, because in the books the Overlook burned down in The Shining, and so it obviously didn't exist. So did they go to the burned down version of it?
Possibly. And one of my thought was maybe they went to it in kind of a mindscape. That's where Danny brought them, because he's like, and because that's what I was thinking the entire time they were there, is that this is Danny's element. He's beat it once, and like if anyone can beat what they're fighting there, he'll be able to do it. And so maybe that he brings them there, and that's kind of
because it's really kind of hard for me to see it another way, because everything culminated really perfectly with unleashing his boxes, getting over his trauma. It really kind of culminated very well in that setting.
Which is also
I'd like to know that.
I'd like to know especially how it goes in the books, because that's fine, we'll stick to the lie for this last part. But I'd be really interested to see, because to me it's having the Overlook still be there after The Shining, and it gave this whole movie that kind of daunting feeling, because you knew the whole time that they were going to end up back at the Overlook. And so it was also because it almost feels like to me that, and obviously there's a book about it, I'm sure it's great, and it's a lot for Danny to deal with, just the trauma of his past, but for that physical thing to still be there, and kind for him to have to confront it, to me seems like extra. But anyways, let us know about any of those things.
Let us know what you thought of the movie.
Of course.
Absolutely. If
I thought it was awesome.
All of us really enjoyed it. So if there's people out there who thoroughly didn't enjoy it, tell us why.
I want to hear that.
I'd love to know what made you
like it.
What made you not enjoy that movie. But we'd love to have conversations with people about this. We also, this channel has an Instagram, so if you wanted to go follow that. We don't have anything
we can
on
link it
but
whenever.
So go follow that. It's just
it's up in the corner.
You
gotta put it there now.
And then gotta figure out how to do that.
It's just at Borgmutt.
So and if you're watching on YouTube, like, we don't really have much out at this point, so we won't be clogging up your subscription feed if you want to give us a subscribe there.
But there's definitely more to come.
Yeah, definitely. If you liked our theories or our conversations, then definitely, try and stay tuned. Come back for us, because we'd really appreciate it. But so
see you
long
later.
for now.
Peace.